What is going on, everyone? This is Miles with Windows Central Gaming, and welcome to the 68th episode of Xbox Chaturdays. Today, I am stoked to be joined by my good pal and Windows Central's very own Samuel Tolbert. Sam, how are you doing on this fine Saturday, my dude?
I mean, I'm talking to you, so it's off to a good start, at least.
Love to hear that. Love having you on. You're basically one of the regulars on this series. Love having you here. Love the conversations we have, and like any other week, we have some good stuff to talk about. We're going to be diving into some brand new game announcements. We're going to be diving into the community's hopes for the Xbox and Bethesda Games Showcase. We're going to be diving into Callisto Protocol, an interesting update regarding that game. We're going to be talking about the Quarry and so much more. But before we dive into all of that, Sam, for the amazing people joining us live on YouTube and listening on audio services, let everyone know who you are and where they can find you.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the regulars definitely know who I am at this point. If you don't, I don't know what to tell you. But if you're tuning in for the first time here, my name is Samuel Tolbert. I'm a freelance writer over at Windows Central and sister sites. I like to say that Miles and I actually joined right around the same time. We were filling paperwork out the same week, so we've had a similar experience, even though we do some different things on the site. So it's been really good. Love working with Miles. Love working with the crew. And you can find me over on Twitter at Samuel Tolbert. That's Tolbert.
Yes, Sam, amazing journey that we've shared together over on Windows Central and its sister sites. Again, one of my favorite people to talk to. Love having you on. Some quick housekeeping before we dive into the first topic today. At the end of the show today, I have a very special announcement for next week's episode of Xbox Chaturdays. We're doing something a little fun, a little weird to celebrate a milestone. And then if you're listening to the audio versions of the show, be sure to take the time, if you want, to leave us a review. We are late to the game for the audio versions, and that helps feed these algorithms. I don't like to shamelessly self-plug, but really you have to. So if you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button, share it out, subscribe to the channel, and if you are listening to the audio versions of the show, be sure to leave us a 5-star review. Okay, enough of that. Let's get into it, Sam. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. The release date has been confirmed for October 28th, 2022. So this is part of this ongoing saga of Call of Duty going back to the well and rebooting, remaking a lot of its legacy franchises. A lot of people had questions or concerns about, this potential of just remaking staples, even though they have an annual release every year. But Modern Warfare, 2019's Modern Warfare, best-selling Call of Duty. That game exploded. There's a lot of energy surrounding the Modern Warfare moniker for Call of Duty in particular. So, how are you feeling about this announcement? Are you ready to dive back into Modern Warfare this October?
I am, Miles. I mean, I want to see more about the game. Obviously, we have a title and we have some key art, and there's some things you can extrapolate from, the maps and where they've been showing off and teasing on Twitter. But there's some leaks as well. We have some leaks, I think from VGC it was, who first leaked the code name for Modern Warfare 2, and that this game was going to deal with Colombian and Mexican drug cartels and counter-espionage with that. And so that's cool. I want to actually see the game first before I make too many judgments, but I will say this. Modern Warfare 2019 is the game that got me back into Call of Duty. I was very exhausted with the franchise for multiple years, but that game is good. If you haven't played it yet, go play that one. Anyone who says Sam, I get asked hey, should I play Vanguard? No, please don't. Should I play Black Ops Cold War? Should I play Modern Warfare? You should go play Modern Warfare. It's an excellent campaign, really good. Infinity Ward knows what they're doing. Activision, this is such a ridiculous thing, an entire publisher just having all its teams make just one game. They did that with Black Ops Cold War. They did it with Vanguard. There's a reason Infinity Ward wasn't on that list. There's a reason Infinity Ward has been keeping to themselves these last few years. They're the best ones over there, in my opinion. That's my take. And yeah, I can't wait to see what they're going to cook up with this.
Modern Warfare, the original, one of those moments in gaming, if you were around and playing games when that launched, much like Halo 3, it was just one of those moments where everyone you knew that played video games was playing that game. Modern Warfare in particular kind of reinvented the first-person shooter genre in a lot of ways and set this gold standard for controls, mobility, customization, and a lot of games, mirrored that moving forward for good reason. So it's exciting to see that kind of franchise come back. And again, much like the first one, I remember the energy of Modern Warfare 2. And you had sold everybody on Modern Warfare. They loved it and they were ready for that. And then Modern Warfare 2 managed to elevate, especially on the multiplayer side, a lot of what made the original great. So I'm one of those people who I'll play a new Call of Duty every few years. I don't play a Call of Duty every single year. I usually take a couple years off. I'll play one. I like it. I don't have any strong negative feelings about Call of Duty, but it's not one of my favorite franchises. But it's been a few years for me, so I think this is the year that I'm going to dive back in, see what's up, because I think I even skipped the last Modern Warfare. So it's been a hot minute since I've really jumped into a Call of Duty. So it's about time to shake off the dust. One other conversation that spurred up with this announcement and the ongoing ABK deal is, are we going to see Modern Warfare 2 launch into Xbox Game Pass? I've seen people online speculate that, when PlayStation didn't advertise that was one of the games that had a marketing partnership for 2022, that maybe Xbox bought out the marketing rights and maybe Xbox is going to try to rush the deal through and have it closed so they can launch this game in Xbox Game Pass. What's your take on this? Do you think it's launching in the subscription service in October?
I think the chance to that is as close to 0% as possible. I'm sorry. I've got to crush some dreams. I got to crush some hopes. We already know from leaked data that PlayStation still has the marketing rights because we found the files indicating that the beta for the game is coming to PlayStation first, just like the last God knows how many. When was it that they got the marketing deal? I think it was Black Ops 3 in 2015. That's when the shift happened. Yeah, so ever since then it's been with them. No, this one's going to be the same way. I know some people don't want to hear it. For the Call of Duty, specifically for the benefits of Call of Duty, in Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard King, we're going to be waiting a little while longer. I think people need to kind of accept that. Obviously, when the deal goes through, they're going to add the back catalog to Game Pass. Like Vanguard and back, all those games are going to be in Game Pass. So that's cool. That's awesome. Great. You don't have to buy them because those games never go on sale ever. It's ridiculous.
Nope.
But Modern Warfare 2, you're going to be waiting. You're going to be waiting a little while.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the conversation surrounding the ABK deal because obviously it's a huge deal. It is the biggest deal that we've really seen in gaming. And as Xbox Game Pass subscribers, we see the potential value in that and what that can bring to us for those big day and date releases. But I'm in the same camp. Unfortunately, I don't see a world. I'm not going to say never because, in this industry, in this climate, nothing's impossible. But I would say it's improbable that it launches in Xbox Game Pass this year because the reality is, and this is I guess I'll just ask this before I go into it, but do you see the ABK deal closing before the end of this year?
I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a legal expert. So all I know is I can parrot what people smarter than me in legal matters say. And so I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to parrot them like a puppet here. I think there is a good chance. I do not think that is set in stone by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it could close in November or December. It also depends on, are they going to work on this over December, over the holidays to get it done? Because with the Bethesda deal, I remember hearing, someone correct me if I'm wrong on this, that they took a couple of weeks break for the holidays. They were like, no, we're not going to, we're on a good path. We'll get this done, in the springtime. So is that going to be the case here? That would make a difference. I don't know if that's going to be the case or not. I think it's a 50-50 coin flip.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think if it does close this year, it will be later on in the year.
And November would be my guess.
And I think it's safe to say that that's not going to impact Game Pass. If that's the reason you're hoping this deal goes through is so that Game Pass titles happen and launch into the service, I don't think that's going to be this year, unfortunately, because the reality is until this deal is closed, they have to be completely independent. Microsoft cannot interfere or get involved with their business operation. And so once this deal closes, then they can start having the conversations about what this means, but they still have to integrate thousands of employees, figure out how all of this gets incorporated into Microsoft, and then start looking at, okay, how do we start getting this catalog into Game Pass? What are the deals that are already in place? Blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of boring logistical things that will keep it from like, oh, the deal closed. Guess what? Boom. All of the games next day are in Xbox Game Pass. I don't think that that's going to be the reality. So even if it does close this year, and again, I know people don't want to hear this, I don't think it's going to mean anything for Game Pass in 2022.
No.
Um,
2023 is where things get a little interesting, I think, because there's other non-Call of Duty games that don't have release dates, and like, where do those fall? Is one of them gonna somehow launch this year? I'm personally skeptical, but you never know. Or are they like 2023 games? That's where things get interesting, and that's where the timing of the deal going through does matter.
Yes, exactly. So again, I understand that we're going to be talking all about this in a little bit. The frustrations and the wants of people in the Xbox community for the holiday to have compelling Game Pass releases, to have compelling first party releases. We will get into all of that, but when we're looking at Call of Duty in particular, I don't see it launching in Game Pass this year, unfortunately. So be prepared to shell out, God, $70. They're doing 70, huh?
$70.
$70.
Ooh, that's going to be interesting. That's another conversation altogether, so I don't want to derail us too much. That's going to be an interesting thing, right? After the deal goes through, or new Call of Duty games, new Activision Blizzard games, still $70, but Xbox Game Studios and Bethesda are still $60 for now. Are they going to stay that way, or are they going to bump up to $70? I don't know. I just think that's an interesting thing.
That is an excellent point, because technically Activision Blizzard will be an entity underneath Microsoft and Xbox, much like Bethesda. So are they going to have the ability to say 70? Our games are set. But again, if it's launching in Game Pass, for the subscribers, it won't matter. For the average player, it will. So yeah, that is an interesting conversation to see if we're going to have this disparity of some quote unquote first party Xbox stuff is 70 and some isn't. Or are we just going to be like, all right, we're at a world where everything's 70 now. That's just what we're doing moving forward.
Oh, Activision Blizzard went through. All right, Starfield, Redfall, bump those tags up. Let's go. We'll see. It'll be fun.
It'll be definitely fun. Quick shout out to the 116 people joining us live on this beautiful Saturday. If you are watching live on youtube.com/Windows Central Gaming, hit that like button, share out the video, share your thoughts in the chat. We're going to talk about a brand new game announcement, Sam. It's been a good week for Star Wars fans. Star Wars fans have been eating good, as they say. We have Obi-Wan. Star Wars Celebration is going on right now. And part of Star Wars Celebration came a brand new Star Wars video game announcement. And Respawn has confirmed that they are working on Star Wars Jedi Survivor, a sequel to Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order featuring the one and only Cal Kestis.
And his poncho.
I mean, let's go. Master Chief wore a poncho. More ponchos in video games, all right? I think...
Unironically, yes.
Yeah,
Come on. I still want my Master Chief poncho. I never got that. Like, where is it?
What was that?
Give me that Infinite skin. Come on.
So, Sam, you're more of a Star Wars fan than I am. Sure. So I want to know how you feel, because I admittedly have only played maybe an hour of Fallen Order. I liked it. I just haven't given it a fair shot and really dove in to finish it. Seeing all the energy and excitement from the fans and the announcement this week has kind of got me reconsidering going back and just seeing it through so I can be part of that hype zeitgeist when this sequel comes out. But how are you feeling?
I'm excited, Miles. I'm really excited. I really enjoyed Fallen Order. That's not to say it didn't have problems. That's not to say it was a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination. It was one of those 2019 games, like that was an interesting year. Metro Exodus, Fallen Order. You had, I think, Control from Remedy, where it was this weird year of, oh, this runs well on the One X. God help you if you're playing it on the base Xbox One type. But there were a lot of games kind of like that. And so, you had the squeezing through the narrow cracks all the time. Like Tomb Raider does it, Uncharted does it, but Fallen Order did it very egregiously. Okay, they have things they can improve because, Miles, this is a current generation only game. No Xbox One port, no PS4 port. They're making it for the PS5, the series consoles, and PC. And the game's director, Stig Asmussen, actually talked about how it's going to use full ray traced lighting. That's one big thing they're going to do, is fully ray tracing the lighting, and they're taking advantage of the console storage space so that they don't have to figure out, oh, how do we hide the loading screen from the player going down this long hallway? They don't need to worry about that. So it's cool to me because this is another. We've had a couple already, but we've had a lot of cross-gen games mostly, and now we're
Yeah.
starting to finally, a couple years later, after these consoles launched, to see developers really take advantage of that hardware, which I think is cool. But also, I just really like Cal Kestis. I really like that time period where the Empire is rising, but you still see a lot of the remnants and shards of the Republic. Some of the Jedi are still alive, and they've said that the theme for this game is survival, that Cal is going to have to be very unlike a Jedi. He's going to have to deal with very unsavory, dark characters and make deals that a Jedi probably wouldn't normally make if they didn't have to. And I like that. I like the Star Wars underworld. I like the bounty hunters, the criminal gangs, the drug trade. Like, that stuff is really interesting. And if they're going to explore that, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to see what a darker tone for this world and this series looks like. So that's something, like you said, that they've stressed, that this will have a much darker tone to the story. And, you know, as a big fan of Shameless, I got to say it's been rad to see Cameron out there go from the rise through the Gallagher ranks to the rank of Jedi and really get out there. And considering that this takes place in a similar timeline to Obi-Wan, there's speculation that maybe we'll see the real actor in the show as well, and they'll have this cool crossover between the video game world and the TV world. And again, I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan, but stuff like that is really cool to hear. And again, if you throw characters that I'm familiar with from other properties into a show, into a game, yeah, I'll dabble. I'll check it out. But yeah, like I said, it's been a really good week for Star Wars fans, and it's been really cool to see all the energy and excitement from that camp. And it's exciting to know that Star Wars, the property in the video game sense, is in good hands, because we know Respawn does amazing work. We know they've with the previous game, they treated the property with respect. They delivered a title that people really, really like, despite its flaws. I saw people talking about this in their Game of the Year conversations. So Respawn, so far, doesn't really miss, and that's exciting to know that they're handling it. And it's exciting to know that moving forward, there's more possibilities for other Star Wars properties outside of the EA banner, because that deal is getting ready to end. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's next year. Correct?
Well, yeah, so basically this year. So what happened is the deal was only EA could publish mainline, not mobile. Mobile's a different story, but only EA could publish like console and PC Star Wars games up until the year 2023. Now, other developers are already working on them because, yeah, like if they started in 2023, they'd be coming out in 2026, 2027, 8, and so on. So other developers and publishers are already working on them. We know, unfortunately, Quantic Dream is working on one. We know Ubisoft.
What is that one called? I was in a party chat last night, just totally blanking on what that one was called.
Oh, God.
The Quantum...
Now that you said it, it goes out of my head.
Yeah, like we had 4 people in the chat, and none of us could remember what that game was called.
Oh my god, I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna remember. I'm embarrassed. But obviously you have the one from Ubisoft as well. They're working on a Star Wars game. You got a couple of others. Respawn is actually making more Star Wars games rather than just Survivor. They're also working on a first-person shooter, and they're partnering with some XCOM devs to make a strategy game. So you know, so there's potential out there. It's going to be interesting to see how it all goes.
And we're in this really cool era where people understand that you can't get away with, I guess, just cashing in on an established franchise. We're in this kind of golden age of licensed video games, I feel like, because back in the day, you would see a licensed video game and you'd roll your eyes and go, oh no, here's the movie tie-in, let's go. And some of them were fine, some of them were even good, but most of them were just middle of the road.
Yeah.
And now we're in a world where licensed video games have this association. They have all this energy, all this passion, and typically and generally speaking, people understand that, and they understand what the expectation is when you step in to fill these shoes and put something out. Evil Dead the game, that's been a big one for me that I've been talking about, because again, that could have been a mediocre, just whatever game that just came and went, wasn't good, wasn't great, and just was forgotten forever. But they knew that there was this fandom, and they knew there was this energy behind it, and they came out and they put out a game that was damn good, respected the IP, and showcased what that world can be in video game form. We've seen that with Star Wars, and we're seeing that with more and more licensed properties. So that's exciting. I think now I'm a lot less cynical when I see a licensed video game announcement, because I know that in this day and age, people can and will show it some respect.
Oh yeah, I mean we've had Evil Dead, the game. I haven't played it, but I know you've loved it, and it hasn't just been, no offense to you, but it hasn't just been you and your love of the Evil Dead. You know, I've seen a bunch of
Yes.
other people out there saying, no, this is a legitimately great game. It's a little cheesy, but come on, it's
Yeah.
Evil Dead. Of course
Yeah,
it
of
needs to
course.
be. You have, I mean, Insomniac, their work speaks for themselves. You know what they've done with the Spider-Man games, and now they're going to tackle Wolverine as well. You've got Gotham Knights coming up, Suicide Squad, Star Wars. Like it's a good time for licensed games. Much better than years past. Much better.
So I guess one final question before we move on from this topic, and
Sure.
this is just for fun here for you and the chat. What is one licensed property that we haven't seen or ever, or at least in a long time, that you want to see adapted into a video game?
It legitimately amazes me that there isn't a big budget survival horror Jurassic Park game. That blows my mind. It's right there. You just have it be like a secret spin-off island. Something goes wrong, the dinos get loose. Like boom, there you go. There's your pitch. Come on. It's right there. Just do it.
What is amazing is Jurassic Park was instantly the thing that came to mind for me. And I know we have like Jurassic World Evolution and stuff like that, but no.
There are the park builder games. Yes, that's a fair point.
But to your credit and your point, yes, give me that big, massive Jurassic Park game that throws you, against, or in situations where you have to run from the T-Rex. Again, people have been screaming about a Dino Crisis game, and I don't know if Capcom cares to ever do it again, but maybe that formula with the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World moniker could drum up a little more excitement, a little more energy, and we can get that to fill the Dino Crisis shaped hole in our hearts.
Right, for real. I mean, and we're gonna bring this up later with one of our points, but there is clearly a market for big budget cinematic horror. Like
Yes.
there is a market for it. Resident Evil's resurgence has proven that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's go. Real quick on the Star Wars title that we couldn't think of. Star Wars Eclipse. Some people in the chat.
There it is. Yep, knew I'd be embarrassed. Yeah, Eclipse.
Acheron. There we go. Yep, a few other people. Eclipse. There we go. We got it. Quick shout out to the amazing people hanging with us. I see a lot of amazing familiar faces. Yodani, Rand's here. Yikes. Mr. Joanna Dark, and so many other amazing faces. I'm going to get to a super chat here real quick from Chivo Guides, who asks, is Double Fine really making the new Banjo-Kazooie? Sam, is Double Fine making the new Banjo-Kazooie?
Remember how earlier in this show we said nothing is impossible? I'm going to file that under that. Look, this is a whole other conversation. I want a good Banjo-Kazooie game. I want a good Banjo-Kazooie remake, even. If you want to do a remake, a redo, whatever, that's fine. I'd take that. But Double Fine, and Tim Schafer specifically, has specifically said over and over and over and over, we like making our games. And specifically, they like making new IP. They don't even make that many sequels. Like, Psychonauts 2 was a massive, massive exception to the rule for them.
Yeah.
Usually, they're always making new IP. They've said they're making, like, multiple projects right now, and some of them may not pan out, but, like, they're trying multiple different things that kind of divide up into smaller teams. So, look, could one team that doesn't include Tim Schafer be working on a Banjo-Kazooie remake? I think it's possible. I think it is definitely possible. I would not hedge my bets on it. I would not go in expecting that.
Tim Schafer has been very vocal because, again, a lot of people have talked about the possibility of Double Fine making Banjo and their culture, their quirkiness, their sense of humor.
I get it. I do.
Yeah, it fits. It fits that template in a lot of ways. But yes, Tim Schafer has been very vocal about the idea of that team doing Banjo. And like you said, maybe it's not impossible for some team within Double Fine to be like, we want to do this, but I agree. I don't think Tim Schafer is going to be involved with whatever that is, because I think the selling point for Double Fine and Xbox Game Studios was having the freedom to experiment, because that's what they love to do. They love to try new ideas. They love to try new recipes for gameplay. And now that they have this financial backing, there's not this huge risk every time they want to take those risks. So I have to imagine the next big mainline project from Double Fine post Psychonauts 2 will be something new, will be a new IP. As much, again, I feel for the Banjo fans. As someone,
I get it. I really do. But Stay strong, y'all.
As a Phantom Dust stan, hoping for that reboot to finally come back, I feel you. I know what it's like to want something, to see the potential in something, to see who could do it, and then not have it delivered on. You know, I've talked about this before, but you know, I've sprinkled some seeds online. You know, I'm out there trying to will things into existence. So I was joking with the studio head of Cold Iron Studios, the team who did Aliens Fireteam Elite. I'm like, hey, this team right here can do Phantom Dust reboot. And sure enough, the dude's like, yeah, let's go. Let's make it happen. So, you know, putting the wheels in motion, nothing is impossible. And exactly.
Manifesting your energy.
Manifest. All right. So I have to imagine. I don't know anything for sure. This isn't some weird leak, but I cannot imagine that we won't be getting a Banjo in some capacity sometime soon. Who it's coming from, what it looks like, what the scope, what the scale is, I have no idea, but there's been too many loud Banjo fans for too long to have nothing, at least, you know, on the table right now. All right. Raven Software got a pretty big win this week that I thought was worth talking about. So, Raven Software, the QA side in particular, following all of the drama with Activision Blizzard, following what they have announced as kind of poor treatment, poor work conditions, they have voted and they have formed a union. And this is all happening during the conversations of the ABK acquisition and Microsoft. And Microsoft currently, they're not involved with unions. That's not their work culture. They don't have that in place. And so there were legitimate conversations saying, is Microsoft going to try to squash this? Are they going to try to downplay the union? Are they not going to recognize the union? So there were some legitimate concerns with all of this once this deal closed. But in an all-hands meeting this week, Phil Spencer addressed the company and said that Microsoft, post the ABK deal closing, will recognize the Raven Software union, which is a really big deal. So let me read the exact quote and then we'll dive into it here. So once the deal, and this is a quote from Phil Spencer, once the deal closes, we would absolutely support an employees organization that's in place. We think it's the right of employees and something that can be a part of the relationship between a company and people who work at the company. As more and more teams look to organize and improve their treatment in the workplace, that is the quote. So, as more and more teams look to organize and increase their, standing in the workplace, it's really important that major companies like Microsoft, one of the biggest companies in the world, recognizes a union because it is important. So, how are you feeling about all these developments? Was there any concern for you that Microsoft would try to downplay this?
I think a little bit. I think honestly a little bit. I hoped that this was what they were going to do. I hoped that Phil Spencer was going to take this approach and make it clear to maybe other Microsoft executives, make it clear to Satya Nadella, like, no, this is going to happen. We got to deal with it. But if I'm being honest, there was a small concern of mine that, like, I don't think they were going to union bust perhaps the way Activision Blizzard has been, which is just... Oof. Okay, that's a whole other conversation in and of itself. But I do think there could have been a world where they were like, hey, do you really need that? Come on, we got rid of Kodak. We got rid of all these other C-suite guys. Like, we'll give you a raise. We'll give you more benefits. Like, come on. You don't have to do this. We're family here. I think there was a legitimate concern that could have happened. And I'm very, very happy that it isn't. And I'm even happier that this isn't being treated as some one-off. Like, Miles, you tell me, but the way I'm reading Phil Spencer's comments there, it seems like he's saying, yeah, this is going to be a thing, and if anyone else wants to, we're open to these conversations. We're open to you doing this and choosing to do this, because this was an all-hands meeting. This wasn't like a leaked conversation from an executive board. He said this to basically any Xbox Game Studios employee who was able to tune in to that particular meeting, and that's a very big deal. And Phil, we're going to hold you to that. You can't back out from this now. Like, you've said that, like, okay, we'll see how it goes. But I mean, I'm all for unions. I think that's absolutely an invaluable workers' right, and, good to see. One other thing, Miles, is this isn't just a big deal for Raven Software. It's a big deal for the North American video game industry. There are other unionized game companies, but they are very few and far between. And this is the first one in, the Americas under a major gaming publisher. It is unprecedented in every sense of the word. So it's a big deal. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, it's a big turning point for the industry in a lot of ways. And again, Phil Spencer supporting this. We've had Reggie come out and basically say it's something similar. If your employees want it, it is your duty as the head of a company to basically support that. And I think that is important because there's been a lot of anti-union rhetoric and quite frankly propaganda throughout the years, and I'm of the belief that in most cases that isn't in your best interest. When a company is telling you that unions are bad, it is not because they want your work condition and life to be better. So yeah, if employees legitimately feel that they need a union or want a union to have better working conditions, I find it very cynical and sinister, quite frankly, for any company to be like, no, that's unions are evil, unions are bad, blah blah blah, all that kind of those buzzwords that they throw around to downplay that, because in this country right now, we really need to start shifting the balance back in the favor of the working class. The people are working more than ever. They're working more hours. They're working more jobs, and they have less to show for it historically in this country. And I'm speaking for the United States in particular. So
Sure.
to see this in the United States, that's a big deal. And I'm of the camp that we really need to start shifting the favor towards people again. And again, as much as corporations hire people, blah, 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 at the end of the day, a corporation is a conglomerate of a bunch of people, and your people need to be treated better, and your people need to be treated well. So yeah, this is a big deal. This is a really big deal for the games industry. I hope we see more of it, and I hope that this encourages more employers to understand how they treat their employees and work to make their employees' lives a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, Miles, think about it. Like, these are specifically, it's the QA workers at Raven Software, and Raven Software works on Warzone. It's like, why would you not want the people squashing bugs and tightening the nuts and bolts on a big, massive game at your company, the biggest game at Activision Blizzard right now, since the deal hasn't gone through? Why would you not want them taken care of well? Why would you not want to bring as many of them on as full time as possible and grow the team? Like, it's just, I don't know. I think anyone who's worried about unions, like human beings aren't perfect. I'm not going to say there's never been issues or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I personally believe you should be very, very suspicious if a company can't find the budget to bring new people on. It just can't find the budget to convert part-time workers to full-time, but they're willing to spend a lot of money and a full propaganda campaign to keep you from unionizing. You should be suspicious. You
Yeah.
should be very, very suspicious.
Yeah, so that is a big deal. Definitely worth talking about, and it'll be interesting to see what that means for the industry. Moving forward, next topic. We got confirmation of an Xbox codename that's kind of been sprinkled out into the ether for a little bit now. And in an exclusive report from our good pal Jez Corden regarding Xbox Keystone, Microsoft has released a statement about the possibilities of a streaming stick designed to basically tear down the price barrier for a lot of players and introduce a new audience to the Xbox ecosystem. So when Windows Central reached out to Microsoft for comment on the situation, this is what they said regarding Xbox streaming sticks and Keystone in particular. Our vision for Xbox cloud gaming is unwavering. Our goal is to enable people to play the games they want on the devices they want, anywhere they want. As announced last year, we've been working on a game streaming device codenamed Keystone. It could be connected to any TV or monitor without the need for a console. As part of the technical journey, we are constantly evaluating our efforts, reviewing our learnings, and ensuring we are bringing value to our customers. We have made the decision to pivot away from the current iteration of the Keystone device. We will take our learnings and refocus our efforts on a new approach that will allow us to deliver Xbox cloud gaming to more players around the world in the future. So, Sam, when they talk about reiterating this device, when they talk about bringing this device to players in the future, what is that future? How far away do you think a device like this is?
Very good question, Miles. Obviously, the pandemic changed some things. It made them reorganize some plans, but I distinctly recall, please correct me if I'm wrong, was it last year or the year before that Phil Spencer wrote in a blog post that they were working on this kind of device? Like he mentioned at the time that they were working on a distinct streaming device. What I'm trying to say, to like allow people who don't have a console or don't want to stream to their phones to like hook it up to their TV, hook it up to their monitor, and play that way. Um, so I'll be honest with you. I'm kind of surprised we don't have it already. I'm a little surprised it's taken this long at all. That's not a bad thing. Obviously, they have streaming to your phones. That you can stream to your consoles now. Like, they have consoles. It's not like there's a lack of ways to play Xbox. You can play Xbox games on your PC if you have that. I think they're taking the time to get it right, and I think they're taking the time to learn lessons from what hasn't worked. Stadia, for example, just hasn't worked. It may not have had the plug pulled yet. It's basically dead. It's hanging on by a thread of life support. It's not getting a lot of new games at this point. There's that. You have Amazon's Luna. Now that doesn't seem to have struggled as much, but it doesn't seem like it's found a big audience. Unless I'm missing something somehow. I don't see a lot of people talking about using Luna. I don't see big subscriber numbers out there.
Yeah.
So I think Microsoft is looking at that and going, okay, how do we avoid that being us? How do we make sure that our streaming device is actually accepted? Maybe not even by the massive market, but so it's a meaningful addition to the Xbox ecosystem. Because that's how I see it, Miles, is this isn't the next Xbox console. That's not what they're doing.
No.
Like, as much as I see so many people, bright people, and people I respect, frankly, say like, oh, they're moving away from the console. Like, no, they've said they're not going to do that. They've said they're going to keep making consoles. They want to broaden the ecosystem as a whole. And I think they're trying to figure out what that looks like right now.
Exactly. Microsoft right now is just looking at ways to diversify their portfolio. And the reality is that, Game Pass, the console, PC, cloud streaming, these are all different pillars of the business. And they're trying to have as many pillars as possible. So no matter where you are or where you want to be, they have something for you. And Phil Spencer's, famously talked about reaching the billions of gamers around the world. And in this day and age, you really have to go to where the customers are. There's a huge number of people who will never, ever, under any circumstance, pay $500 for a console, ever. In any world, that is just unbelievably absurd for a lot of people. That being said, some of those same people do have a passing interest in gaming. And so if you have a device that is really cheap and they can just connect it to their TV and have a controller and bam, they're set up, that is a new audience. And as we've seen with, Stadia, you can't come out half-baked. And I wonder if that is the reason they're reiterating this device, to make sure that when it hits the market, not only is this device rock solid, but their cloud gaming infrastructure is rock solid as well. And every year that goes by, we see major improvements to cloud gaming. Cloud gaming's been in beta for, a couple of years now, and there have been humongous advancements in that. And it's been really exciting to see. And now we have the Series X blades, we have 1080p 60 streaming, and I would imagine that when we hear them say they're reiterating, they're really trying to make sure that this device hits. And it isn't something that somebody tries, they get excited about the possibilities, and then immediately gets unsold on the vision of this tech.
Right.
Because if it isn't solid, if it isn't rock solid for the average person with average internet, it's not going to matter. It's just it's going to be a flash in the pan that the word of mouth on it will be negative and people will just move on to something else. So on this topic, I want to ask you what features this needs to have to be successful and what price point this needs to be successful.
Okay. So first up, in terms of feature set, I think that's pretty simple. It needs to just do rock solid streaming, but it needs to have the full UI experience. This can't just be a weird thing of, oh, you launch this and you're just, going through a Rolodex of games or whatever and just choosing which one you launch and connect to. I don't know what that looks like right now, but the UI needs to be smoother than what we have right now for Xbox Cloud Gaming. It needs to be a little simpler because right now it is a little bit more of a hassle than I'd like to launch a game and then to get into it. Shortening load times. Now that's not on the device itself, that's more server side, but if they could do that, because sometimes it takes a good minute to launch into a game, depending on where you are, how busy the servers are, if they can improve that kind of thing. Because when people want this, I think they want the instantaneous experience. They want it seamless. They want this to feel like they are. This is an ill-seated comparison in a lot of ways, but I think in this it works. They want this to be like Netflix or HBO Max or Apple TV. Just click, click, you're playing.
Yep.
They got to get closer to that. They got to work on that. They got to iterate that. Now, what was the second part of your question again? Price point? Okay.
What's the price point need to be for this device to be successful?
So this is a little tricky because there's one elephant in the room here. They're still going to have to buy a controller.
Yes.
Or it's going to have to be bundled with a controller. If maybe sell it separately if you already have a controller and you just want to get the device, but presumably bundled with a controller. I think with the controller, it needs to be no more than $100.
Okay.
I think with a controller, you should hit for $99.99 US, you should have everything you need to start playing.
That's where the price point to me, I think, is the really interesting factor. Because obviously this needs to be much cheaper, noticeably cheaper than getting a Series S.
Right.
Because
Which is
otherwise,
already noticeably cheaper than getting a Series X. So
so this needs to be a new market. But at the same time, we do have like Roku sticks and other streaming devices that are 40, 50 bucks. They don't have to worry about the latency. And that is where I think the device, I hope, is premium in a sense that it can deliver an experience that has a really powerful Wi-Fi card. It can't, it just can't. If you don't have rock solid Wi-Fi connection for cloud gaming, you will have latency, really noticeable latency. The difference between single band and dual band is night and day. So if this thing does not have at least dual band connection, it's not going to be successful. And that makes me think that I have a hard time imagining this device under $100. Like, I know I've seen people talk about $50.
No,
but
certainly not with a controller. No.
Yeah, so I wonder if they have like, I'm imagining I'm guessing $99 for just the standalone device. That's where I'm at.
Okay.
I'm hoping they do a hyper aggressive bundle or a promotional bundle with a controller that's initially really cheap. But I imagine if you want just this device, it needs to be under $100, and I imagine about $100 would be the target. Because if you want something that is going to deliver a solid experience, it's got to be better than a Roku streaming stick. Because all Roku needs to do is it needs to send you a signal. It doesn't need to receive anything, really. And with the gaming, if you want to have a decent experience, as an experience that's close enough to native, it's got to have some decent tech in there. So I imagine in the future, we will have the app just baked into TVs. There's been the speculation that Samsung for a while is going to do that. But in the interim, I'm wondering, is this going to come out before that? Or now are they just saying, okay, well, we're just going to partner with TV manufacturers, and that is going to be how we leverage it. And now you're just going to buy your Samsung TV. And if you have a Samsung TV, you just buy a controller and you're set. But if they do a standalone device, I am hoping for something that is great and not okay. Because you're trying to sell people on the possibilities of Xbox cloud gaming on this tech, and if the experience isn't great, then you're not winning anyone over. You're not maintaining any new customers, really.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think we're on the same page here.
I think so. So yeah, if I see people in the chat saying 100 is too cheap, 129 to 139 maybe. I'm seeing some people saying $60. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting expectations because it needs to be noticeably cheaper than the Series S for sure.
I'll say this. I'll add one addendum to my price point. I think if with a controller, this is with a controller bundled in, if it isn't under 150, it's dead on arrival. I think that is theoretically the absolute maximum you could go. Because any further than that, and it's like, why are you not just buying a Series S?
Yeah, that's where I'm at. 150 in my eyes is the maximum. You should definitely not be exceeding $150 because you could still swing it. That's half the price of a Series S, and $150 is $150. But yeah, you can't exceed $150 with this device and win over a new audience. Again, price is king. And if you got a cheap stick and you can say, hey, pay $10 for this month and you can play hundreds of games, boom. That is a new audience that wasn't going to buy a console, wasn't going to be in the Xbox ecosystem, that now is. So I got to give a quick shout out to all the amazing people joining us live. If you are watching on youtube.com/Windows Central Gaming, hit that like button, share the video out. If you are listening on audio services, be sure to leave us a little review. Let us know what you think of the show. And let me see, I got a super chat here from Yodani, who says, Elden Ring USA code drop incoming. Hit that like. Oh, snap. If you are watching live, Yodani's going to be making it rain with an Elden Ring code? Game of the year? Multiplayer game of the year? Game of the year? Best RPG of the year? Best horror game of the year? Best multiplayer game of the year?
Wow, you forgot about Evil Dead the game fast.
I mean, it's, like I said, if we're ignoring Elden Ring, Evil Dead is my favorite multiplayer game of the year. But I have, I think, close to 10 days of playtime in Elden Ring already. So
I hear you.
I like it. I like it a lot.
I'm with you. I'm right up there with you. Okay, I was playing it just this morning, toying around an area I somehow still miss. The game is so dense. Good
It's
God, that game is dense.
It's absurd, dude. I'm playing it right now with a buddy who was deployed when the game came out, so now
Okay.
he's finally got a chance to dive into it. And so, yeah, like watching his experience, re-experiencing all these areas for the first time and asking like, "Okay, I'm here. What am I like halfway through the game?" And then me just laughing, "You stupid fool. You're nowhere.
No.
You have so much to see." And it's so good.
Good.
All right. Let's talk about the Quarry. I gotta play the Quarry last week. I gotta spend probably about roughly an hour playing a couple chapters of this game. And if you're unfamiliar with the Quarry, this is the upcoming kind of spiritual successor to Until Dawn from Supermassive Games. So it is a narrative, choose your own adventure inspired horror game that puts you in the shoes of a group of camp counselors staying the night at Hackett's Quarry. And as you might expect, oh no, something goes wrong. Something goes horribly wrong. So, Sam, I know you're a huge fan of Supermassive Games. I know you're a huge fan of Until Dawn. I'm going to kick it over to you. I'm going to let you, if you have any burning questions you want to ask about this and my experience with the game, hit me.
All right. So, first things first. It's been said already. I read your preview, but just for the people who didn't read your preview, just to hear it again. There's been some games that Supermassive has made since Until Dawn. They've done the Dark Pictures anthology. It's had ups and downs. I still haven't played House of Ashes. I hear House of Ashes is the best one so far. I need to go play it. Is this to you a true sequel to Until Dawn?
This, much like Until Dawn, as much as I liked some of the Dark Pictures games,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people felt that they didn't hit the same highs Until Dawn. They didn't truly deliver that campy horror movie experience in video game form. And I think The Quarry, for people who preferred Until Dawn, is much more that. I enjoyed Man of Medan. I enjoyed Little Hope. Again, didn't play House of Ashes as well, but this is much more in line with that big, true kind of cinematic experience that Until Dawn delivered. And in a lot of ways, based on what I've experienced, it's kind of the evolution of that. So the engine is looking better, the performance is better. I will say, when I played Man of Medan at launch, the performance was abysmal. It was
bad.
The frame rate was like 5 FPS, not even exaggerating. It was so unbelievably rough around the edges. So that was disappointing. So I previewed this on PC, so I haven't had a chance to play it on console. I did submit for review codes for Series X, so I want to see how it plays on that. But I played on PC, and I even installed it on my Steam Deck as well, just to see how it would perform. And my frame rate overall was much more consistent. One thing I did notice that kind of bugged me is during scene transitions, when you would go from one scene to another, there were hitches. So there would be a weird stutter. And again, once the scene loaded, it was fine, but there was a noticeable stutter between a lot of the main scene transitions. And that's something that they let me know before I played that was an issue. So I'm hoping that gets kind of fixed. But that was, in terms of performance, the one thing I noticed. Much better than Man of Medan so far. Again, I've only played about 2 chapters, and I don't know how many chapters are in this.
Okay. Did you play from the very beginning, or was it more like we're dropping you into somewhere in the first third of the game? We're dropping you in, and it's already begun.
So I didn't get chapter 1. It let me play chapters 2 and 3. So pretty much not right at the start, but shortly after the start of the game.
Do you know how long this game is? Because, and I don't have a problem with this because I understand what they're doing, but the Dark Pictures games are much shorter than Until Dawn. They're like less than half the length, like 40% or so. They're each like 3, maybe 4 hours, but Until Dawn is a good 7, 8, 9 hours. So
I don't know how long it is, but from what I've gathered, this will be their longest experience. My understanding that this has more options and is longer than Until Dawn.
Okay, good. Now the other thing I want to know about is the star power, the acting, and this kind of ties in with that cheesy horror goodness of, classic slashers, because that is the single most appealing thing about Until Dawn to me, is the cast. Like,
yes,
yeah, some of them suck, but you like these people. You really like this group, and you, as much as you want to like, they make you want to tear your hair out, you don't want them to die. And whether all of them live or die is up to you. Obviously, that's still the case here. Everyone can live or everyone can die, right? It's the same deal. So talk to me about the cast without spoilers, if you can. Like, do you like them? Is there any good acting, any good cheese, good time with all of them? Like, is it evenly spread out overall, or?
Yes. So if you're a horror nerd like myself, the cast of the Quarry is so stacked. So ridiculously stacked with horror icons. It's got Lynn Shay, one of the ultimate, most legendary scream queens. It's got Lance Henriksen, who was he was the villain in all of your favorite classic 80s movies. It's got David Arquette of Scream fame. It's got Ted Raimi, the brother of Sam Raimi, who's been heavily involved with writing and producing a lot of the Evil Dead universe. Who else is in it? It's got Gracie Zabriskie, and I might have butchered that, but if you've seen Requiem for a Dream, she is the mom, the sporadic mom. She plays this tarot card reader character, and she kind of serves. If you've played like Man of Medan, she's kind of like the narrator that happens in between sequences, and her performance amazing. You're just in this creepy, dingy shed with her, and she's reading cards to you, and there's this amazing sense of atmosphere. That being said, I grew up watching campy, terrible horror movies. My family movie nights growing up, we didn't watch your typical Disney G-rated movies. We would gather around as a family and we would watch terrible B horror movies together. Like once a week, that was our thing. And so I've always loved that kind of, community of coming together to watch cheesy horror. So all of the characters in this, all of the camp counselors are a major stereotype in one way or another.
Good.
You got your jock, you got your quiet artistic goth character, you have the pretty boy, you have the tough badass chick who just wants to get a rise out of everyone. So everyone has this really exaggerated personality, and like you said, on the surface, if you look at the stereotypes, you hate them. You're like, oh my god, I just want you to die. And then they'll do a scene where they get a little more intimate. So you get to sit down with that person, you get to get their background, you get to see their motivations. So like the jock character, not to spoil anything, he likes one of these women a lot, and they're in kind of sort of hooking up, whatever. They play a game of truth or dare, and one of the characters dares one of the other men to kiss this girl that the jock Zach likes, and then he gets all riled up and like tries to fight the dude and storms off, and then the next scene is him just like sitting on the dock like crying. And so he's like went from like the stereotypical like machismo, like I'm gonna fight you jock, to like having that intimate moment where he's just sitting there obviously upset that she doesn't feel the same way about him that he does. And so there are interesting character dynamics that so far, again, I've only seen 2 chapters that flesh out those relationships. So on the surface, it's what you want from a campy movie. You want just an eclectic group of characters to be butchered in a lot of ways, but also they managed to get you attached in more ways, and in a way that most horror movies don't. So you, like, as much as I hated the jock character initially, like towards the end of my preview, I was like, all right, okay, I'm kind of rooting for this guy. I get where he's coming from. And so I hope there's more of that. I hope we really have a reason to see all of these characters live. I unfortunately didn't get to see David Arquette or Ted Raimi, or I saw a brief, and I mean brief, like 5 seconds of Lance Henriksen. But overall, performances are solid. Not earth-shattering, but definitely above your average B horror movie. So
I'm in. You're saying all the right things. 2K has been saying all the right things, showing this off. Supermassive saying all the right things. I'm in, man. I'm in. I guess last question that I could possibly have on the core, without spoiling anything, of course, is how does it feel mechanically? Is it very much like if you've played Until Dawn, you've played this game, like in terms of how it controls, how the scene looks, and that sort of thing?
Very much, yeah. Most of what I played was not gameplay, in terms of you didn't actually control the characters. I did have a few sequences where, yeah, you had free range of controls. You were wandering through these environments, and there were a couple gameplay mechanic additions. So there was like a camera sequence where I got to like scan the environment, take some pictures. There was like a tease of maybe combat. There was this little game that you played towards the beginning where you had a gun and you were like doing basically target practice and shooting objects. So I'm curious to see if combat is introduced in a way. That's kind of what they're alluding to. I didn't get to like fight anything per se, but it seems like they're setting that up. So yeah, very similar to Dark Pictures and Until Dawn in a lot of ways. And I'm curious to see if it's expanded on. So far, outside of a couple little additions, it's more or less what you'd expect from that formula.
But that's what I want anyways, so that's totally fine.
Yeah. So if you liked Until Dawn, I cannot stress that, at least so far, based on what I played, that this is scratching that itch in a huge way. And if you love horror, this team obviously loves horror as well. They obviously understand the tropes. And what I'm excited about is how they're going to play with the expectations of horror, because
Right.
clearly this is founded in cliche stereotypical horror, but I don't imagine this is going to be a cliche stereotypical horror story.
I mean, we all know how Until Dawn sets up at first, and then another reason that game is so good is the other the other claw, I should say, drops on the mountain, and then you're like,
Yeah.
oh,
Oh,
that's
that-
what we're doing. So you have to imagine there's something similar brewing in the quarry. You have to imagine, but
Exactly. I'm excited to get weird with it. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone. But I got to see brief glimpses of what some of the monsters or monster could be. And that obviously I have a better idea of where it is potentially going now, but I'm curious to see what that big reveal is, cuz again,
sure.
like in Until Dawn, the big reveal is not what you're expecting.
No.
Definitely not. And I'm hoping that's what the Quarry is as well.
All right. Awesome, man.
All right. So yeah, just a few more weeks. For me, this is a major bummer. But one note is the game is still shipping on time, June 12th, I believe. But
10th, June 10th.
June 10th. Okay, but they are delaying the online multiplayer mode, like the online theater mode. So the local theater mode is still there. So I'm gonna watch it with my wife and one of my good buddies who lives in town.
Sure.
We're gonna sit down and do it up that way. But if you are looking forward to playing this online with, I think they were adding 8-player support online, which is really, really cool.
That's wild.
That is being delayed until July 8th. So
what about the movie mode where like you could scramble things, like you set their personality traits instead of making decisions and then you watch the game play out? Is that still in at launch?
Yep,
Because I was really interested in that. Not for my first playthrough. My first playthrough is going to be single player, of course, but on repeats or like a date night or something, it's like, all right, you know what? That's kind of cool. I like that.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because again, it is cool that first time to have that experience, have the controller in your hand. But again, if you have people coming over, you just want to have it on in the background or whatever, or play through it again. I like that option of just selecting parameters and just seeing what happens.
Yeah.
It's like, a movie that you get to customize every time you watch it. All right, so yeah, the Quarry, I'm excited. Let's dive into. Actually, let me get some super chats. And if you are watching live, now we are diving into the bulk, the big topic of today's show. And earlier this week, I took to Twitter. I asked you what a successful Xbox and Bethesda game showcase would look like. And I compiled your hundreds of replies into 4 main categories. So the next topic of the show is going to be diving into each one of those to see, what fans want from Xbox at this upcoming showcase. But first, quick shout out to the amazing people joining us live on youtube.com/Windows Central Gaming. If you are digging the show, smash that like button, share it out, all that great stuff. And if you are watching live, Yodani, it's probably already been claimed, but Yodani dropped a code for Elden Ring. Missing the clue was missing letter is Miles' favorite game, Resident Evil code blank. Oh god. The slander won't stop here.
Good one. Good one. Excellent.
Again, can't be upset because he's giving a free game code away. So legend. Absolutely legendary thing to do. Absolutely generous thing to do. Georgie says, why is Sea of Thieves your favorite game? It's not even Rare's best game. Georgie, I've said this before and I'll say it again, but Sea of Thieves was the most important game of last generation for a lot of reasons. Player freedom, originality, and world building. I understand that Sea of Thieves in some ways, because of its online only presence, isn't for everyone, but when it comes to originality, when it comes to sense of character, nothing comes close to it in my eyes. Like, Sea of Thieves managed to create this world that was so original, so compelling, and it managed to give me systems in a game I've never ever seen in a game before. And again, something I've talked about is, when a game can come out and deliver something I wasn't expecting over and over and over again, there's nothing more exciting than that. And we see so many games that come out and say, I like this idea, I'm going to do this idea in a different setting. And that's cool. That's fine. There is, that is respectable. But when you can come out and deliver a product that there's nothing like it, the reason I love Phantom Dust so much is there is nothing since it's come out that is even close to it. And that's the same reason I love Sea of Thieves. There is nothing like Sea of Thieves, and that is powerful. That is so hard to do in this day and age. And for those reasons, it's It's just special. And again, the PvP thing I think is a big point of contention. Sometimes I like to get out there and be messy, cause some trouble, cause some mischief. So I like it. How you feel about Sea of Thieves, Sam? I know you don't play it a lot.
I don't play it a lot. I don't play as much as you, but I hop in every now and again. I'll hop in. I'll play for a couple of hours. I'll play for a little bit. We should catch up and do some of the new stuff one of these days, because I actually really like some of the stuff they're doing now of the evolving storyline with the mysteries and the kind of ARG elements. I was writing about that I think last month when they announced it. It was like, okay, this is kind of cool. I really like this. And they've got like the whole fan campaign. They're taking votes on how to evolve the story. Like, it's ambitious. I'll give them that. I don't love Sea of Thieves as much as you do, but I certainly respect the hell out of it. I mean, there is nothing like Sea of Thieves. It's Sea of Thieves, and it's like, if you want a game like that, I don't know what to tell you. I really, really don't.
Yeah, so it's really hard to do, and that's one of the reasons that I respect Rare so much, and that's one of the reasons that I've been very vocal about, letting Everwild take whatever time it needs and whatever iteration it needs, because I imagine that is their approach to Everwild too, is delivering an experience unlike anything else. And when you're treading in those, pardon my pun, uncharted waters in a lot of ways, sometimes the gameplay loop can be hard to lock down, and sometimes it's figuring out what makes that gaming loop fun takes some iteration. Because if there's a lot of amazing pictures. If you look at, I think it was Unity was the original build for Sea of Thieves, and looking at the VeggieTales-esque like characters,
it was something.
It was something. So to see that foundation turn into this, it's exciting. And that really goes to show you that making a game it's just a miracle that any game ships ever at all, really. And sometimes that gameplay loop doesn't really come together until the very end. So yeah, that's why I like Sea of Thieves. A long-winded answer there. Super chat from Hargi Chani says, "Hey Miles, did you finally decide if you're going to LA for the Xbox Showcase?" Probably not, honestly. I would like to go, but I just traveled to Seattle, and I'm also going to Bruce Fest in June as well. So as much as I want to go, I just find, unless someone gives me a sack of money, I just can't really afford to fly to LA for it. As fun as it would be.
Miles' wallet and wife are looking at him like,
dog.
We're not doing this.
Exactly. So yes, it would be a blast. I would like to go, but it is not in the cards financially for your boy. One more super chat from Amin Bambrick. Says, "Hey Miles and Samuel, I love the show. I wanted to ask what Marvel game you would like to see and who should develop it." The Punisher from the Coalition is what Amin's saying. So this is a fun conversation. I think we've had this one before, but if you're picking one Marvel property and one developer, what's it look like?
All right, well, I'm gonna tickle your fancy here and go for your boy Sam Raimi, because I've got Multiverse of Madness still fresh in my mind. And have you seen it yet, by the way?
I haven't. No.
Okay, all right, dude. It's good. It's a
That's
Raimi
what I hear.
film. It's this is not. It's a Marvel film, but it's a Raimi film first. You will love it. Just first 5 minutes, I was like, a Raimi trope. I love it. Excellent. This is the right spot.
Love
no
hearing
spoilers.
that.
No, seriously. Remedy Entertainment make a Doctor Strange game. Come on, like Remedy can do some wild environmental effects. They can do wild, non-straightforward storytelling and the weird, self-aware stuff with like the Alan Wake TV show and then Control and the SCP Foundation. They have the power set. So like, imagine what they could do if they're cutting loose and have you rending through the multiverse and flinging spells and fighting undead and monsters. Like, come on. Doctor Strange by Remedy.
That would be amazing. The particle engine and the physics engine of Control, I could see it. I could really see the Doctor Strange universe being created by Remedy based on what they've done in the past. And yeah, that would be a really amazing dream pairing that would really respect and tie into what makes Doctor Strange a cool superhero. For me, a Marvel character that's near and dear to my heart that I don't think gets nearly enough love is Gambit. I think that is a character with a unique, set of skills, unique set of weapons, the cards, the bow staff. I want to see Ninja Theory, who's done Enslaved, Odyssey to the West. A lot. They're known for combat, and I want to see
DMC Devil May Cry,
exactly DMC. I want to see a Gambit game from Ninja Theory. I think that is my dream pick, because not only would that just be so wild to see in this day and age, a Gambit game, but I could really see Ninja Theory dialing in that combat and making a Gambit game feel really, really damn good.
I can see it. I can see it.
All right, let's get into the bulk of it. So as I touched on, this is a big topic and this is a big conversation in the community right now. And like I said, took to Twitter this week to ask the general community what a successful Xbox and Bethesda Game Showcase this year looks like. And again, there was a lot of wish lists of games, but really what I was trying to do is boil it down to the main points of criticism or feedback or hopes that fans have. So what we're going to do is we're going to go point by point and discuss what Microsoft could do to deliver for fans on the 4 biggest points based on your feedback. So the first one, far and away the first one, the one I saw so many dozens and dozens and dozens of times, gameplay. Gameplay is the thing that people want to see the most. And so I think that's fair. Sam, what could Microsoft do in terms of gameplay that would satiate its audience and make them happy at the end of this 90-ish minute showcase?
Anything and everything. No, seriously. Look, the reality is gameplay. Like, they didn't. I want to say this in their defense. Go back and watch last year's show. I don't think they did bad in terms of gameplay. Forza Horizon 5 certainly got an extensive bit of gameplay. I know it wasn't a gameplay demo, but they showed Halo Infinite's multiplayer in a gameplay trailer. Like, they showed the multiplayer off for the first time. Like, there were other games, they weren't first party, but like, they showed gameplay. So I want to push back against the idea they never show gameplay. I think they do. I think they've gotten better over that. However, this year has to be the best. There's just no question. I understand the games were delayed. You still need to show Starfield's gameplay. Maybe because it's been delayed, you don't need to do the Todd Howard 30 minutes of how it just works demo. Like, I think
it just works.
I think we can rein it in a little from there. Maybe 5 to 10 minutes, somewhere in there. Like, I think you can be much more restrained because the game isn't inbound this fall. You still need to show the gameplay off. You still need to show what some of the combat or exploration or flight or vendors, wandering through these alien cities. You need to show that. Redfall. We need to show what the gameplay actually looks like. Like, what does it look like if I'm playing by myself, making my way through these vampire-infested towns? How does that change if I have friends with me? How does the game balance change? You got to show these things off. If Forza Motorsport is really this year, as we generally think / really, really, really hope is the case, so there's something on the calendar year, show Forza Motorsport gameplay. Maybe you don't have to go like super in depth, but a quick overview trailer of some of the things you've changed. How is this one? Why are you dropping the number? Why is this not Forza Motorsport 8? Why is it Forza Motorsport? Talk about that.
Yeah.
If there's any other games this year that we speculate, maybe the smaller Obsidian game from Josh Sawyer's team, like, okay, what does that look like? What does a smaller murder mystery Obsidian game look like? If we're getting a release date for something like Avowed or Hellblade 2, all right, a quick gameplay trailer on that. Like, just gameplay. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I'm in the same camp as you. I thought last year's Xbox and Bethesda Game Showcase kind of set the new gold standard for Microsoft in terms of pacing, in terms of how they delivered, coming out, setting the expectations right away of what you can expect in the show. And I agree. I do think they did show a decent amount of gameplay last year. I know notoriously a lot of people complain about CGI trailers. And again, I've talked about this before, but when you're revealing a game that's in a lot of cases years off, it is what it is. I mean, it is, it's effective for setting the tone of what a world can be. Maybe it's not the best representation of gameplay, but again, that's what the gameplay trailers are for. So I'm fine with it for new reveals, but I think we're getting to a point where, I don't think we are at a point where a lot of people are out of patience when it comes to like what these games look like. And again, there have been a lot of factors that have offset some of these releases by a year plus. So that's just the reality. As much as you're impatient, as much as you're upset about it, it is what it is. We really can't go back in time and change any of that. So moving forward, as we look to the future, I hope to see at least 1 or 2 gameplay breakdowns outside of Starfield and Redfall, because I agree, those should be there. And I imagine those will be there in some capacity. Like you said, maybe it's not the 30-minute gameplay breakdown of Starfield now, but I imagine we will see gameplay for those 2. Outside of those 2, I hope we see gameplay for Avowed, I hope we see gameplay for Everwild. Just one or two of those games that have been previously announced to show people how they're progressing, what's coming along. Even like Everwild, even if it isn't necessarily the big gameplay breakdown, we've had reports, whether they're fair or not, saying that Everwild's in development hell, whatever the case might be. There's been a lot of negative reports about the status of Xbox projects. I want something that shows, like, here's what it's looking like. Here's the end. This is not in development hell. Here's what it looks like. Here's, what we're targeting. I think that would go a long way. And again, as much as the Activision Blizzard deal hasn't gone through, I do think we're going to see some Blizzard stuff at this in terms of gameplay that'll help fill that. I hope we see Forza as well. And again, I would love a couple new reveals when it comes to gameplay. And hopefully that can help satiate the audience who desperately wants some Xbox games to play on the first party side of things.
Yeah, I guess I'll sum it up by saying this. If an Xbox first party game is releasing through the end of next year, so through the end of 2023, we should probably know what it looks like. It doesn't need to be a 10-minute in-depth demo, but we should at least have a quick look at what it looks like.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And again, that was their promise last year, is that everything they were showing at the showcase for the most part was coming in the next 12 months ish. And I hope they continue that to really fixate on the near future. And so speaking of that, the second biggest point of feedback from the community was they want a roadmap of what to expect from Xbox for the rest of this year, for the next year in particular, not the distant future. They want a roadmap of what the near future looks like. So do you think there's a world where Xbox can come out and deliver that? And what would that look like?
Well, I think they can, Miles, because here's the thing. So Starfield and Redfall have been delayed. They were going to be this summer for Redfall. I'm just going to say September, because that is, I think, where it probably would have been. And then November 11th. So those are now in the first half of next year. Maybe, if I'm guessing, this is a guesswork, I don't know anything, I'm going to guess it's something like Redfall in March, Starfield in May. I think that makes sense. That gives those games time, spacing. Okay. So, was there originally anything in that first half of the year? Because if so, you probably have to move it a little bit, like into the summer, but not too much. So, like, maybe Hellblade 2 is July or August next year. All right, so give a release date that. Maybe the big end of the year game is Obsidian's Avowed. Obsidian can end the year out. The Outer Worlds was in October, and that did really well. So there's no reason they can't. I don't want to hear any excuses of, oh, they wouldn't put that game there. Like, yep, they absolutely would. I think that makes perfect sense. Open the year with a big RPG, close the year with a big RPG. Makes perfect sense to me. We don't know a lot about it, so I'm a little hesitant on this one, but I think Contraband from Avalanche, like, maybe that's ready next year. Okay, so slot that in August or September, I think roadmap is a tricky word because all we can do is guess at the release dates, but we should know what is releasing this year, whatever that is at this point, and then we should know what's releasing next year. That's my opinion. Just whatever that 18 months looks like, show it.
Exactly. And I'm really hoping that's what they lean into, and they give us some sort of, again, because things change, obviously. Sure. Delays are just an inevitability in a lot of cases with really big budget games, and we can have a different conversation about should you announce a release date if you're not 100% sure. But the reality is a lot of Xbox fans want to know roughly when they can expect these games. And we've had the conversation from Phil Spencer and Satya Nadella talking about, the one big game per quarter. And like you said, I agree. I think if they are using that mantra, I think Q1 will be Redfall, and I think Q2 will be Starfield. And then again, maybe we can lean into Contraband, and Hellblade would be, let's say, the 4 for next year, for example. Let's say that's hypothetically. I don't know. I don't know what that if that's what it looks like. But let's say hypothetically, if they could come out and do that and say, here is what we're aiming for, I think that would go a long way to kind of keep people optimistic about the future. And obviously, people are hoping that they have something that's coming within the next 6-ish months before the close of the year to really get people excited. And I think they'll be leaning into third party heavily for that, because the reality is I don't think they have any surprise game that's going to come out and just fill the Starfield gap. Like,
Nothing big, like a smaller game could. We know there are some
yeah,
publishing projects that are small. Like, I'm not saying it will. I don't know. Jez knows more about this game than I do, but Project Belfry. I can see a world where that gets announced for this year.
yeah,
Okay, I can believe that. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's actually next year. Maybe it's 2024. I have no clue how far along that game is. Josh Sawyer's smaller game at Obsidian. I can see that being announced for this year. Grounded 1.0. I think that is still on track for this year. Last time I checked. So that is fine, but they're not going to conjure a Starfield out of thin air.
yeah,
It's not going to happen.
yeah. So obviously that for some people, obviously that is a big deal. That is a big hit.
Sure.
Um, the third point here that a lot of people were asking about is, what about my Game Pass subscription? If I'm not getting Starfield, if I'm not getting Redfall this year, what else am I getting with my Game Pass subscription? So a lot of people want to see a a lot of Game Pass releases. And again, last year I think they did an amazing job basically saying,
Mhm.
here is the one game per month you can expect for the rest of
Yep.
the year. And I really, really, truly hope they do that again this year because that was so effective to get people excited about Game Pass because it was a good spread. No matter
Yep.
what games you preferred, there was a little bit of something for everyone there. And I hope they lean into that adversity with this showcase and again, reaffirm the commitment to getting big titles in Xbox Game Pass. Outside of first party stuff, are there any third party games you're hoping that Microsoft really leans into to get a day and date drop for this year?
We talked about Call of Duty before. I'm not entertaining that discussion. Sorry. It's just not happening. I would also kill any hopes of Hogwarts Legacy. PlayStation has a big marketing deal with that game. I don't see it happening. I think they would have paid to block that, just like Resident Evil Village. So when I look at it, Miles, I think there are three targets in particular that make sense to me. And also we already know that A Plague Tale Requiem, which is still on track for this year, they're going to have that in Game Pass.
Yep.
I don't care what some
Yep.
people say. That's a big AAA game. Asobo
That,
is punching well above their weight. I love A Plague Tale. I don't want to
look,
hear it.
that game looks
Okay,
so good. So good.
so there's that one. They presumably have one already, so we got to fill out the other months. I think Saints Row makes sense. I
Right
like
there.
the look of the new reboot of Saints Row. I like the more grounded tone, but still keeping a little free spirited, still a little wild. However, I think it's fair to say a lot of people don't. I think there is
Yeah.
a lot of uncertainty around that game. Hey, that sounds perfect. That sounds great for a Game Pass deal. That makes perfect sense. Another one. This is the second one that comes to mind. Gotham Knights. That game is dropping its last gen supports. Current gen only now. That's a lot of copies that they're not going to be selling. Maybe makes you more open to a discussion. Plus, there is co-op, and we know that Game Pass has been great for co-op games. Back for Blood, any others, Vermintide as well. They've got
Yep.
Dark Tide coming up in September as a timed exclusive. So like big on co-op, Gotham Knights makes sense. I can see it. The third one is the one I'm most uncertain of, but I still think it would be really great. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that game, I think, to close the show. And that's the Callisto Protocol, which is a
Yeah.
big horror game from a completely new studio, but a lot of people who worked on the original Dead Space. You want to talk about getting the hardcore to pay attention? Show that you can land a big, hardcore single player game in Game Pass. That would speak volumes. Because even if you don't potentially like horror games, it would be, whoa, there's this big AAA single player game, then they're going to have it there. All right, that's a big deal. So yeah, those are the three that come to mind for me. And those are the three, if I had Microsoft's war chest and I don't have Starfield and Redfall and I'm looking at the spread of months, those are the three games I'm going to go after.
Yeah, I think those are all three excellent picks. Saints Row, I think of the big third-party AAA games launching this year. I think that would be a really cool one. And again, I know a lot of people weren't super stoked on the reveal, but the more I see gameplay of that, the more I realize that it really is a Saints Row game. And I think being able to get that word of mouth out if the game does land well and having it be in Game Pass will be a huge boon to that. Yeah, you talked about Dark Tide, that's coming. I would love to, it's not confirmed, but it kind of is confirmed, but who knows? Atomic Heart is one that's on the table right now for this year. That game is one I've had my eye on for a long time. That is a really ambitious single player game, kind of in the vein of BioShock. I think that would be a huge get. We have Scorn as well, which I believe is already confirmed to be launching in Game Pass. We don't have a release date for that. So there
Just
are
October. Yeah.
yeah,
So.
there are a lot of possibilities on the table for filling out that the remainder of this year with worthwhile stuff for you. It might not be for everyone. Again, I've talked about this previously, but maybe leaning into some games that released earlier on this year to critical acclaim, or that, like Evil Dead, I think would be, if you could get that for October, even though it's not a brand new release, aligning that with a new content rollout, because it is going to have the seasonal approach. If they could align it with that, bolster the audience that way, that would be a compelling one. Obviously, a lot of people talk about Elden Ring. If you can get the game of the year, there's no way it doesn't win game of the year from everyone. Realistically, I just can't imagine a world where it doesn't. If you can get a title of that caliber into your subscription service, you can feed into that narrative that we do get the best games. And so I think that would be a humongous get for the service. But that game is still selling like gangbusters, so I don't really know what that would even cost. But there are some really good options to fill out the rest of the year with Game Pass. And again, for people who are upset about Starfield and Redfall, I hope that they really lean into that to make sure that the rest of the year is stacked for Game Pass. Final point, and the one that I like talking about the most, another big area of feedback is, as much as people want to see gameplay for stuff that's already announced, people love those surprise reveals, Sam. And people want to see brand new reveals as well. So let's speculate here.
All right.
What are some surprise reveals? It doesn't necessarily have to be realistic, but what are some surprise reveals you would hope to see at this showcase?
Okay. So I'm going to preface this by saying I think it would only be one or two big ones if we're talking, especially if we're talking first party, because the focus we just spent how long talking about this needs to be on gameplay for what's coming this year and next year. If the focus needs to be the immediate roadmap. When I think surprise, I think, okay, this is a ways out, y'all, but this is what you got to look forward to years from now. That's when I think of this, I think The Outer Worlds 2 last year. That's a good example. That kind of, hey, it ain't ready in the next 18 months, but this is happening. So, speaking of Outer Worlds 2, hear me out. We already know Bethesda has their hands full. They're working on Starfield. And they're working on supporting Fallout 76. And after that, they've got Elder Scrolls 6. We know the next few years of what Bethesda Game Studios proper is working on. Heck, Todd Howard's going to be helping on that Indiana Jones game. So, Fallout, poor little Fallout, is left all by its lonesome. It doesn't have someone here. But what if? Miles, to close the show, after we get our gameplay and the new release date for Starfield, that's the second to last thing they show in the show. What if Phil Spencer talks about everything? He does his recap of all the studios they bought like he did last year, talks about the ABK acquisition coming along nicely, and then says there's one more thing. And we hear that familiar Fallout jingle jangle, but then it says from the creators of Fallout New Vegas, in partnership with Bethesda Game Studios. And we just get a quick CGI teaser, 20, 30 seconds tops, showing the new location and the new title of an Obsidian-developed Fallout game. Years off. That's my take for a surprise to end the show.
People want that, because I've talked about this before, and you just touched on it. A Bethesda-made Fallout game is so absurdly far away. If you're looking for a Bethesda Softworks developed Fallout game, I would say 10 years.
I think there's legitimately a chance it doesn't happen this generation.
Yeah.
Legitimately a chance.
Yeah, so people don't want to have to wait that long for new Fallout, because people love Fallout, and Fallout 76 for a lot of people is in a state where it is decent and people can play it. But yes, people want that New Vegas 2, or they want the next Obsidian developed Fallout, and I think that would go so far to satiate those Fallout fans who just don't want to think about a world where they have to wait 8-ish years for a new Fallout. So I think that would be a really good one. For me, a couple things that I hope to see when we're talking about the big gaps for Xbox first party. I would love to see, obviously we talked about Activision Blizzard, all of that stuff. What I want to see, what I would love to see this holiday season, is I want the Diablo 4 release date at the showcase. I want them to be like, boom, here is Diablo 4. It is coming this holiday season. It is coming to Xbox Series X via a beta before it drops so you can play it on this new console. And I want that. I want that moment because even though it's not first party, that is a game that has the potential to fill a Starfield gap for a lot of players. Me personally, I would be putting hundreds of hours into Diablo 4 if it dropped this fall.
Same.
Again, I don't know about as the Game Pass drop would be huge if they could somehow secure a deal where that drops into Game Pass. I don't know that would be the reality if it happens, but that energy as a big surprise during the showcase would be huge. And people, again, I realistically think a lot of that would quiet a lot of the people who are upset about Starfield, because you put Diablo 4 in Game Pass this holiday season, boom, that is a humongous get. I want to see what's next from Compulsion. Compulsion has been really, really quiet. I want the one more thing for the showcase to be the new Compulsion reveal. I want it to be bold. I want it to be big. I want it to be weird. And I want to have that moment. Like we got it sort of with Redfall, where that was the one more thing this time around. Right. I want the Compulsion project to be that next one, and to see what they're working on next. Because again, I don't think we're going to get a ton of new surprise reveals, but you got to have a couple. Unfortunately,
but if one or two big ones, that's good. If you can do a couple of big ones.
You want the conversation. Even though, again, it's probably years away, but if you have something that's exciting, compelling, gets people riled up, you have the conversation, you have the discourse, you have that positive energy. So yeah, Compulsion would be great. And this one's just for me, and I don't know if everyone feels the same way, but I want the Dragon's Dogma 2 reveal.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
I like if Xbox got the reveal for that, I would be so stoked. I'm hoping we see it from someone this year, but again, that would be such a cool, like with Monster Hunter World. I never expected that one at the Xbox showcase, and when I saw it, I was like, "Oh man, yes!" And again, I want it to have that kind of mystique where it is this transformation of what the original one was, to the point where it's like almost unrecognizable. Like when you first saw that Monster Hunter World trailer pop in, like it took me a long time to realize what that was, because stylistically it was so different. So those are just a couple. And again, that's just for me, the Dragon's Dogma 2 one, but let's go.
I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting you mentioned Diablo 4 and then Dragon's Dogma 2, because Miles, I don't know if you've seen this, but over the last couple of years, Microsoft has shied away more and more from just showing a third party for the sake of showing a third party. Like at the 2020 showcase, if I remember correctly, July 2020, everything they showed there was in Game Pass. Every single
I think that was their big marketing beat.
2021, almost everything. I think it was just a quick trailer for Far Cry 6, Battlefield 2042 gameplay, and then Diablo 2 Resurrected gameplay. That was it. Like everything else was Game Pass. So the point I'm making is, I like your Dragon's Dogma point and your Diablo 4 point, because if it's not in Game Pass, it needs to be big. You can't. The days of just showing a third party for the sake of showing a third party are over. They're done. Kaput. Like, why would you do that? If it's there, it's because it's a big game, and you want people to say, "Hey, when I think of that big game, I associate it with Xbox." Like that needs to be the mentality that's going on here.
Yeah, because we've seen PlayStation do it to great success. They've built the brand association with certain titles. They're doing that with Hogwarts Legacy. They've done Resident Evil, Destiny, Final Fantasy, and a lot. Final Fantasy, that is straight up exclusive currently, but for a long time there was just the brand association there. So yeah, associating a really big upcoming third-party game with your platform does carry weight. And like you said, I don't want it to be just one of those things that feels like it's marketing for the sake of marketing, where they're just like, somebody came to them and said, "Hey, can you put this in your showcase?" And like, sure, whatever. I want it to really fit the energy and the flow of this showcase. And I imagine that's what they'll lean into, because I don't know that it'll be a ton of third party, but I'm expecting the third party that we do see to be pretty damn cool.
Yep. Agreed.
And so, yeah, I think based on a lot of people's feedback, those are kind of the key points that Microsoft really needs to hit on with this particular showcase. And again, there's a lot of, more negative conversations right now because of those delays. And we're in the topics of, what have you done for me recently? We came off a really great holiday last year where they did deliver some really great games. There was a lot of, I guess, concerns, questions about the roadmap this year because it seemed pretty light, and then they delayed their two biggest games. So now people are like, in a lot of cases, doom and gloom, very pessimistic about the future of Xbox. And I imagine that they understand what they need to come out and do with this showcase. And I imagine that it will be a really good showcase, especially if they manage to improve upon the foundation that they set last year. I'm excited. Again, this is coming from the person that Starfield was not my most anticipated game of this year. Anyway, so for me personally, that's whatever. But Redfall, I was really excited about that, and I'm hoping that Xbox has some cool stuff to show. And I'm confident that Xbox does have some cool stuff to show.
I mean, speaking as someone, Miles, who Starfield was his most anticipated game for this year, no question. I think the cool thing is everything we just talked about, even the big surprises, even like the Fallout, from Obsidian or Compulsion's game as a big surprise. Nothing we talked about is out of the realm of possibility to me. Like that's the thing. Everything we talked about, in my opinion, is very realistic. So I think it will be a great showcase because I think everything we talked about, the particulars may vary, is within reach. They can do this.
Exactly. And that's what is the most exciting thing for me about this showcase is we really don't know. We really don't know what it looks like. And as much as we're in the industry and people want us to report on every single leak and send out the master list of every single game that's going to be dropped at the Xbox Showcase, for me, as someone who loves gaming, I love those surprises. I love those moments, those big reveals, and it's cool to be a part of that, to have everyone share in that moment where you see this title get exposed to the world for the very first time. And I know teams feel that same energy, and I'm sure that is one of the reasons that Microsoft has kind of worked harder to ensure that those leaks don't come out, because I talked about the Sea of Thieves Pirates of the Caribbean thing.
Yep.
Like, that is something that I had known about. Somebody sent me pictures of that before it came out. And I was annoyed. I was so annoyed that they sent me pictures of that, because that reveal, that trailer was so good.
Mm-hmm.
And to have that moment, because it was one of those things that in hindsight, yeah, I should have assumed that Pirates of the Caribbean and Sea of Thieves would be the ultimate crossover and like the best possible crossover. But that thought never crossed my mind. I never for a second considered Pirates of the Caribbean and Sea of Thieves. So if I had that moment and that reveal where it was new to me for the very first time in that way, the energy would be so amazing. So I hope we can keep most of the show a surprise, just for the sake of the folks who want to watch it and share in that. Again, I know a lot of us are impatient. We just want to know, blah, blah, blah. But for the sake of the energy and the fun of the games industry, I hope most of it stays a surprise.
I mean, we're almost there. 2 weeks in a day. 2 weeks, actually, it's 1:40 p.m. ET. Less than 2 weeks in a day at this point. Like, we're almost there.
We're almost there, and hopefully we can make it. And again, we'll see, because like you said, all the stuff we talked about, it's not impossible, not even improbable. There's a real possibility for everything that we talked about, and that's exciting. That is exciting.
Yep.
All right, Sam. Final topic today. Final topic, and I'm gonna have you spearhead this one.
Okay.
I'm gonna touch on the rough foundation for it, but there's an interesting update there's been some interesting updates regarding Callisto Protocol. So, big blowout from Game Informer. It is their featured game right now. But in some other news, the team has come out and said, and this is an earth-shattering announcement, that Callisto Protocol is no longer set in the PUBG universe. And so, first and foremost, I gotta ask how that hits you, man. Is your hype for this game gone, knowing that it's no longer in the PUBG universe, or
my
what?
disappointment is immeasurable. My day is ruined, Miles. I was shattered. I was heartbroken.
Like, what is it even gonna? I can't imagine this game without PUBG.
Yeah, like it just screams PUBG. All of it, from the diegetic Dead Space interface to the Dead Space style monsters to the Dead Space third-person camera to the space setting. All of it. It was just so PUBG.
It was one of those like dream pairings that you just never, it was too perfect to be real. And I guess that's ultimately why it's not happening anymore.
Wasn't meant to be. Okay, all right, for real. For real, it's whatever. It's the stupidity of it. I will say that. I liked how utterly stupid it was that this was somehow connected to PUBG. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. All I'm asking, Striking Distance Studios, Glenn Schofield, please. I want a joke frying pan weapon. You remember the foam finger gun in Dead Space 2 you unlock for beating hardcore?
Yes.
Give me that, but it's a frying pan. I want to whack a monster with a frying pan. limbs and gore go flying everywhere. One hit kill on bosses. Like, give me that and we'll be happy. All right, we'll be happy.
That was the weirdest part of that entire reveal. I remember seeing the Callisto Protocol trailer, hearing who was involved, a lot of legacy Dead Space team members, and being so excited and being really interested in what this universe is. And then in like a blog post, like, and this is set in the universe of PUBG. I'm like, what on why? What on earth is that necessary? And it's one of those things that felt like, and maybe this is cynical of me, but it just felt like one of those things that just existed purely for the sake of marketing. And
I 100% agree. Or it was like, oh, this is a condition of us giving you a new studio and a new game. Is like, we're crafting, formerly known as Bluehole, we made PUBG, like, we gotta tie it in.
Exactly. Using that brand association in a way that, again, it's set in the future, it's not connected to PUBG at all in any foundation outside of the sense that you're telling us that it's in the PUBG universe. And it just felt so weird. So it doesn't surprise me at all that now that the game has a lot of energy, has a lot of excitement, they realize that they don't need that brand association and this can just be its own thing and they don't have to be beholden to whatever the lore of PUBG is. Which I'm ignorant on what the lore of PUBG is, so I apologize there.
I don't know I have no idea. I've played a ton of PUBG. I've played PUBG on console, PUBG on mobile. I don't know what PUBG's lore is. I couldn't tell you.
So, alongside this, there was a really kind of in-depth article that gave us, some details about Game Informer. You read through that. You and I are both big Dead Space fans. What does it sound like players can expect from Callisto Protocol?
Miles, and I mean this in the best possible way, it sounds like they can expect Dead Space. But some people are going to be like, oh man, it's just Dead Space. I'm like, hell yes, it's just Dead Space.
Yeah.
Like, that's great. It's a third-person game. The story setup, your character's name is
Josh Duhamel.
Well, no, that's the actor.
I know.
That's the actor. Okay, but now we're gonna go with that. Your character's name is Josh Duhamel. Sledgehammer's worked with him
He's
before.
playing as himself, Josh Duhamel.
Yeah, he's some sort of mercenary / smuggler. He crash lands on the world of Callisto, which everyone knows is an icy moon of Jupiter. And so Jupiter is always there. They say it's always looming over you. You just look up and you see this giant gas giant planet there. And he gets thrown in prison. But shortly after he's in prison, something weird happens. There's some sort of outbreak, and now most of the humans in the facility are being infected and slaughtered by these things called biophages. And they are the monsters that we saw very briefly in the trailer. It looks like they're like expanding and growing out of human beings or fusing together. And one interesting thing in the Game Informer article, Miles, is they said they didn't want to give too many details, but they said the longer the game goes on, the monsters evolve. Like, even the very basic ones are going to change form and evolve new abilities, because the idea is like, this is the heartbeat. This is the birth of an infection. You don't know what to expect. It's constantly changing. The enemies are constantly changing up. Very Dead Space. You've got different guns. They are proper guns, though. They aren't like repurposed mining tools. It's like an actual shotgun, an actual handgun. You've got a gravity weapon, which is like you can manipulate objects and enemies with gravity. So it's just like the telekinesis in Dead Space.
Yeah, there we go.
But here's the interesting thing. They said there's a lot of environmental interactions. Like, there might be a spiky wall, so you could push an enemy and just slam them into the spikes and they get stuck there and die. Or, like, if you shoot an enemy's legs off, just like the necromorphs, they'll evolve and they'll start crawling towards you or grow a new limb to try and hit you with it, or just stuff like that. Again, like, the Game Informer article didn't have any like spoilers in it, so they were keeping it very spoiler light. But it sounds perfect. It sounds like a Dead Space spiritual successor. They talk about how this is not a cash in. The team is working very hard to make sure it is a horrific game. And we'll see how that goes, because I think, much like you, I'm kind of desensitized to horror. Like, it takes a lot to scare me. There's a few games that scared me. Alien Isolation, legitimately scary. Legitimately a tense, scary game. There's a few here or there, but if we can recapture that original Dead Space, then that'll be something. They even talked about how the audio technology is the same as was used in the film The Witch, to create apprehension and dread. They worked with that composer. He's not the composer for the game, but he made the technology they're using. It's called the apprehension engine, which is just awesome. That
That
rolls
is
off the tongue, by the way. And the apprehension engine mixes the sound to appropriately create the most horrific like soundscape mixing based on where the player is at, the monsters around them, if there are no monsters around them. So I'm like, come on.
come on.
Gimme, gimme, gimme.
If you haven't seen The Witch, it is one of the most effective sounding horror movies. Like visually, there's not a lot that happens in that, but
the sound,
the use of sound. Oh my, yeah, you're always on edge. It's just a static scene of people sitting at a table, and you're like on edge. You're tensed up. So that's exciting to hear.
Yep. No release date yet, but still slated for 2022. So cross your fingers and toes, everyone. Cross your fingers and toes. I cannot wait. I cannot wait for this.
And I imagine we will see the big gameplay reveal at Summer Game Fest.
I mean, Jeff Keighley has been eyeball emojiing every single thing that account posts and every single thing that Glenn Schofield posts on Twitter. So I've got this weird hunch. I saw yesterday when I was updating our list of big game events on Windows Central, they have retweeted from the Callisto Protocol Twitter account. They retweeted the Summer Game Fest announcement. So I'm like, okay. All right. So,
yeah, I mean,
bring on June 9.
June 9. We're there. The next week stuff is kicking off, and then it's just been a couple really exciting weeks of game reveals and showcases, and with Summer Game Fest live and Xbox Game Showcase back to back, we're gonna have a lot. We're gonna have a lot of game reveals. So I'm curious to see what the conversations are about the rest of 2022 following this week. Because obviously, the last couple weeks they've been really negative. And like I said, I'm not faulting anyone for being upset or disappointed. That is what it is. You should feel the way you feel, and you're entitled to feel the way you feel. But I'm hoping that we get some cool stuff to kind of course correct a little bit and make the future of the rest of 2022 look a little more optimistic for Xbox players.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Sam. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of Xbox Chaturdays. Huge shout out to all the amazing people who've been joining us live. Next week, I'll just do this announcement now. Next week, for episode 69 of Xbox Chaturdays, I will be joined by Randall Thor 19 and Jez Corden for the big Xbox Chaturdays and Xbox 2 crossover, the Xbox 3-way. So, yeah, terrible joke we've been running with for a while, but we're making that joke a reality next week. So that's going to be a cool crossover. It's going to be our big predictions episode for the showcase, as we'll be 1 week away. So, yeah, if you're excited, you want to tune in, that should be a ton of fun. I will always bug Rand to be on cam. I doubt he will, but I will be harassed, maybe is aggressive, but yeah, I'll be harassing him every day to get on camera. So we'll see if he does it. We'll see. I doubt it. I wouldn't get your hopes up, but maybe we convince Rand to jump on cam for this big crossover. But Sam, one more time for all the people hanging with us and all the people listening after the fact, where can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can find me over on Twitter at Samuel Tolbert. That's Tolbert if you're listening. And you can find everything I'm writing over on Windows Central and sister sites. I have a lot of cool things I've been working on over the last couple of months. I've been really head down on some big projects, so it'll be exciting. And then, of course, we're going to be covering all the news. We're going to be making some coffee. It's going to be a busy couple of weeks.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. A beautiful time of the year for gaming and a rough time of the year if you're covering gaming. That's for sure. But it's exciting. That's the payoff. That is definitely the payoff. So yes, show Sam some love. If you're not following him on Twitter, do it. If you dig the show, show him some love. I always love having Sam on. He's been on the show more times than anyone for a good reason, because we can always sit down, have some great conversations. So appreciate you, Sam. Appreciate everyone tuning in, and we will catch you next week. Take care, everybody.
Take care. Be safe.